No. That's still the same. That should be. That's September. Yep. Good morning, everyone. It's 9:01 a.m. Welcome to the DAC meeting, October 11th, 2023. Can I have a call to order, please?
Calling the meeting to order. Gregory Gabriel.
He's just right behind you, signing in.
Here. Michael Cuevas.
Present.
Nick Mielich.
Here.
Roger Jansen. Stephen Graham. Brian Chagas.
Present.
Brad McPherson.
Here.
Kim Doe.
Present.
Okay, now we'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next is approval of minutes from September 13th, 2023. Are there any comments or additions for the approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve minutes.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second on the approval of the minutes?
Second.
I hear a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of minutes passes unanimously. Next is report from the city urban designer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Calio Avens, City Urban Designer. And for updates, I just want to let you know the city staff is revising the Article 18 from the Court of Ordinance that relates to parklets. This is because of lessons learned during COVID and also some feedback that we gathered from the community in this past couple of years. So anything that comes out of it, we will be bringing back to you. And that's it.
Oh, thank you. Next is declaration of ex parte communications. Anyone have any ex parte to declare?
Yes, I am not sure of the case number. What are the case numbers here today? I did speak with Joseph first on the case today, and we reviewed the project, and it will not affect my ability to make a objective decision today.
Thank you. So noted.
Mr. Chair, I had a phone call with Jose, I believe Jose, and that would not impact the way I vote today.
Thank you. Okay.
For the record, case 2217.
Okay. Thank
for
you
the
for
Nora.
Next, we're going to
changes.
open up to public hearing. So if there's anyone in the public that wishes to be speaking today, they need to be sworn in. Please stand.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to public hearing B, continued cases. CRC number 23-04, a request by Meredith Lay of Schutz and Bowen LLP on behalf of Place Projects and NDT Development LLC for the DAC review of code revisions to Chapter 94, Article 4, Downtown Master Plan Urban Regulations, Section 94-109, Definitions and Minimum Requirements, Section 94-110, Signage Requirements, Section 94-124, North Railroad Avenue District, and Section 94-132, Transfer of Development Rights Program. The subject code revisions propose to allow newly defined covered structures on rooftops, to exclude an interstitial non-active parking garage level from overall story counts, to extend mixed-use signage provisions to commercial properties fronting North Railroad Avenue, and to revise NORA ground level setbacks for the new streetscape design. The subject code changes and language updates will affect properties throughout the downtown master plan area within Commission District Number 3, Commissioner Christy Fox.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have to recuse myself from CRC case number 2304.
Okay. Thank you. So noted.
One additional, I have to recuse myself from this case as well.
Okay. I think we still have a quorum. Yep.
Sorry, may I have a minute here? The city attorney advises we only have 4 members on here. Is that sufficient quorum?
Yes, it is per the code. However, you should know that, I'm not, this is not for a variance or any. That's fine. If it were for a variance or something like that, it would take 4 affirmative votes. But it's just a code revision. You have a quorum.
Thank you. And now we'll hear the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Meredith Lay. I'm with Schutz and Bowen, and I'm here today with Joe First with Place Projects. He's part of the ownership group of the NORA development, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him to introduce the amendments to you, walk you through the particulars, and if you have any questions, I'm here and available for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
By way of introduction, Joe First, founder, managing principal of Place Projects, and one of the lead partners and developers on the NORA project here in downtown West Palm. Just to refresh your recollection, in 2021, we had acquired some property in this area that is now known as NORA. It was generally an underutilized, primarily vacant stretch of industrial buildings and underutilized vacant land in the downtown. We started to think about what this place could be into the future, what types of changes would need to be made from a planning and zoning perspective to bring this into life and really create great additive and accretive neighborhood to the downtown. So we started talking to the city. We collaborated with the city of West Palm. We had a planner involved as well, Plus Urbia, and we designed a master plan to help re-envision this neighborhood into what it is on its way to become. On February 7, 2022, all of the NORA zoning designations were made, and we've been hard at work ever since. So where are we now? The first project that's underway, which many of you have probably seen or have heard about, is all of our infrastructure and streetscape improvements. So along North Railroad Avenue, which is our main street, we are replacing all of the underground infrastructure, all new water and sewer, all new storm drainage. We are undergrounding all of the power lines. From a streetscape perspective, we are adding a cobblestone street, a curbless street, 14-foot sidewalks both on the east and the west side of the road. This is coming from a sidewalk condition that was less than 4 feet in width, and clearly a street that could not support any type of vibrant retail and commercial uses. The next phase, which we are soon to have all of our permits out of the city, I believe, Chris, which is for 154,000 square feet of commercial space along North Railroad Avenue. That's across 13 buildings, 9 of which are adaptively reused and 4 of which are new construction. The image that you see on the screen is effectively our retail master plan. All of the buildings on the east side of the road are new construction. The ones on the west side of the road, again, primarily our adaptive reuse, with the exception of 2 new buildings that we are building there. So we come to you today with really 2 sets of issues. I think the first 2 are extremely low-hanging fruit. There are changes to NORA specifically, things that were candidly just missed when we were doing all of our planning and zoning work the first round. The first of which is related to, just let me go through here, sorry. The first of which is related to setbacks. So along North Railroad Avenue, when we created the original development regulations for NORA 5, those are the properties on the west side of North Railroad Avenue, and NORA 2 to 8, which are properties on the east side of North Railroad Avenue, the setbacks that were put in place were using the existing street condition. And setbacks are measured from the backside, the curb of the road. So when we started to design our projects, specifically for new construction, vertical development, we realized that the setback regulations didn't work because we have a 14-foot sidewalk plus a landscape buffer and other elements. So the first change is merely adjusting the minimum and maximum setbacks to fit with what's actually been designed and is under construction as it relates to the road. So that is just for NORA, NORA specific, and again, just for properties that are fronting North Railroad Avenue. The second item that we realized is when we designed our signage and wayfinding, because obviously this neighborhood is a cohesive commercial district. When we were designing the signage, we realized that the east side of the road had different signage regulations than the west side of the road. The west side of the road, NORA 5, uses the standard downtown master plan signage regulations. The east side of the road was using more of a residential designation because it was previously a BPDR district. So as you can see, the code change is simply just allowing the commercial properties fronting North Railroad Avenue on the east side of the road to have the same signage standard as the west side of the road so that we have a cohesive signage plan. So those are the 2 that are specific to NORA. As it relates to the DMP, so we've obviously gone through design and permitting on all of our commercial buildings, and we are under design for our first vertical construction project, which is a 211-key hotel with our partners BD Hotels. In my view, BD Hotels are the best hotel operators in the country. For those of you that have any familiarity with New York, they are the owners and operators of institutional hotels such as the Bowery, the Jane, the Maritime, the Mercer, the Greenwich Hotel, the Chelsea Hotel. And so we're very honored to have them as partners. We started to design a project and we came into 2 specific issues. And we brought these to the city to discuss, and the city agreed that these are issues that other developers have been facing and that it would make sense to make code revisions to the entire DMP to address these issues. The first of which is related to covered structures. So on the rooftops currently, you are allowed to have 30% of covered structures on top of a roof. What you were not allowed to have, which seemed peculiar, especially when you think about how hotels specifically utilize rooftops, such as the Ben Hotel for food and beverage operations. What you were not allowed to have were habitable structures that had uses such as food and beverage uses, bar uses, seating uses, et cetera. And if you wanted to have those uses, it would actually be an additional floor of height. And so we thought that was a little bit peculiar, and when we had brought this to the city, they agreed. So the change that's being proposed here is simplistically to increase the covered structures percentage from 30% to 35%. And secondly, to allow within those covered structures there to be enclosed structures and have uses that are effectively accessory to the underlying use of the building. So the city was very specific and adamant that whatever uses could satisfy the covered structures element of the code would not have things that were unrelated to the building. So, for example, you couldn't just put a covered structure, enclosed structure on the roof and lease it to a third-party office user, because that would be effectively an additional use to the building and something in conflict with the intent of the code. So in this situation, again, the key points are that now it goes to 35%, that you can have enclosed structures. When you do have enclosed structures, they do count towards FAR. This is not a workaround for the FAR limitations in the code. And the city went one step further to say that only 30% of your linear frontage could have these structures, or else you'd have to step back other structures, because what the city was concerned about was from the street level, having these covered structures read as an additional story, as an additional floor, so that that's not the case with this at all. So that there's plenty of sight line that you get from the street or from the roof looking down, because you can't have more than a 30% of your frontage covered with these covered structures. So that is the first of the two code amendments that affect the entire DMP. And the second of which is related to, it's related to really the definition of height and stories, but more notably, it's about mezzanines. So as you know, in the code, you can currently have 50% of your floor area as a mezzanine use, and that requires you to have an active or liner use on the frontage. For us, in our hotel that we're designing, it was very important for us to satisfy the parking requirements within the code. And in order to do that, we had to have a parking floor within the building that was greater than 50% to satisfy that parking requirement. Brought the same issue to the city. The city told us, you know, this is a recurring issue. So rather than change the definition of mezzanine, why don't we just think about how to think about height within a building and ensure that you can use a mezzanine space or an interstitial floor, we'll call it, to provide parking, as long as you don't exceed the total height of your allowed zoning code. So this does a few things. First and foremost, it allows you to have an interstitial floor between 15 feet and 25 feet. So effectively within your first floor height, you can have an interstitial floor as long as 90% of it is for non-habitable use. So it's specific to something like parking. You do not have to have a liner use, of course, because you are using that floor area for parking, but you do have to have a requirement that the architectural features of the facade completely hide any interstitial floor or any idea of parking or any idea of the mezzanine, and the city staff will show certain examples of that. And so that will also, I think, help people achieve their parking needs within the downtown and do so in a way that does not create any, I think, less pleasant buildings from the standpoint of what you see from the street, but it allows a lot more flexibility for people to actually achieve their parking requirements on site, which is something that I know is important to the downtown and to the city. So those are all of the items. I'll turn it over to Chris to carry the staff portion of the report and go from there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Chris Kimberly, Urban Design Planner. Just getting right into the thing here for Code Revision Case 2304. Starting with the first ask, which is a code amendment to our covered structures. I just want to give a quick rundown on some of the more main points of the code revision here. The first of which is the 5% increase going from 30% gross area on the rooftop to 35. Staff believe that this was a change that is acceptable and a reasonable increase to the rooftop areas, as we're seeing a lot more developments come in now within the downtown that are utilizing the rooftop spaces, really creating amenity decks, pool decks, their garden spaces, meeting private space requirements, things like that. So we thought this slight increase accommodates both covered structures that may be gazebos, trellises, things like that, but also allows a little bit more flexibility to enclose some of those spaces. And then as Joe had mentioned, we do have the limitation that only 30% of a primary elevation or frontage can be enclosed with covered structures prior to stepping back 10 feet. So just to give a brief illustration or example here, again, this isn't the scale, but just to show there on the left, this is what we're talking about. When you have an elevation facing a primary frontage there, you want 30%, no more than 30%, to have that extra covered space there. The image on the right, you'll see in the kind of dotted line here, this would be the 35% rooftop area. Obviously, this covered structure isn't fully utilizing that. They're moving 30% of that frontage here. And if they were to build out the rest, which is this cross-hatched area, they would have to step that back 10 feet. And again, this is just to reduce the perception of an additional story. We don't want the mass of the building to be overwhelming with these covered structures. Again, this is an accessory to the rooftop. It is not the primary use of the rooftop. So we really wanted to allow a portion, including your elevators, stairwells, that portion area, but also giving rooms for enclosed amenities, food and beverage services, what have you. So again, that stepping back motion there is to help with the mass and scaling of the projects. Moving into the second ask for the code revision, this is in the interstitial parking level. So again, this is allowing a single level of online parking between the first and second floors within the first 15 to 25 feet of your podium. Active use liners and parking garages has been one of the most common variance requests that we've seen within the DMP. You know, a lot of the urban spaces and lots are very constrained and tight, so meeting your parking requirements within a lot of these projects has been tough. And so this was an attempt for us to really provide more flexibility without really compromising the public realm. We don't want to impact the architecture too much. And again, we want to maintain that this is a cohesive project when this option is utilized. So within here, again, 90% of the floor must be a parking use. It has to be fully integrated with the architecture. We are not allowing any applied elements, so you will no longer see the screens and green walls and things like that if this option were pursued by the developer. Basically, they are hiding their parking use within a double-heighted podium. We say that the project cannot exceed 70% of the max required parking. This is basically to try to reduce parking. We always want to have projects park at its minimum. But if you are going above and beyond, we recognize that there are needs for that, but we don't want to promote extra level of parking within this interstitial space. So really, we were trying to keep it to a minimum. We asked that all other levels, so the first and second level above this interstitial space, meets its active use requirements without requesting additional variances. There is no mezzanine within this parking level. It is, as it functions, a parking mezzanine, if you want to call it that. And the height of the parking level will not count toward the height in terms of stories. So you could fit if you're in a 10-story district, you could fit an 11-story with this parking, but it wouldn't count as 11 stories. We would still count it in terms of your feet height maximum. So if you have a cap of 125 feet, that 10 feet of parking space would still count toward that. Here are some examples that we are trying to reference and show what we mean by really incorporating the architecture into this interstitial space. So this example here is actually from the hotel proposal that is currently in review. So you can see here on the left image, this space is occupying that in between from first and second story. The first floor here is a double-heighted podium with the lobby and entrance. And then if you look on the right image here, you'll see that this is really seamlessly integrated into that architecture of the building. You would think no differently that it's just a double-heighted facade. So that's really what we're trying to emphasize with this code change. And another example that you might see more recently that's here today and developed is actually the City Place Towers. The first 2 or 3 stories of this is actually garage, and it is, again, integrated seamlessly with the facade being fully glazed and the punch outs of the windows and that. You wouldn't think that there is a parking use behind that, but there is. And the last couple code revisions here are really cleanup work, as Joe had mentioned. So we had an issue with when we did the rezoning that signage for the Brailsford Park residential really wasn't addressed in either residential or commercial signage. So this really just allows those properties that are highlighted in the red hatch in there to adopt our commercial and mixed use signage regulations that are throughout the downtown. And again, as Joe had mentioned here, this was a cleanup on our streetscape. setbacks. So in the image on the top here is the prior existing conditions, very narrow. We had a 5-foot minimum, and I believe it was a 10-foot maximum. That did not fit into the new streetscape that you see below, where we do have, you know, a 6 to 8 foot landscape buffer and a 8 to 12, 14-foot sidewalk area. So that correction to the setbacks is really just to address the new condition of the streetscape. Overall, staff recommends approval of Code Revision Case 2304 and finds that it does meet all the amendment standards of Section 9432A. This project is scheduled to be presented to the Planning Board on October 17th and will be later going to the City Commission in November. And I have a suggested motion of approval, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Chris. So I think we're gonna see if there's anyone, members of the public, offering comments for this case. Seeing none, I'll turn it to the board for any comments.
I have a quick question. The retractable roofs, such as awning and other things that can, be opened when it rains or sunny, and then open out, like that would not be under the covered structures, right? Yeah, these are permanent, like they would be permanently covered.
So something that has to be secured or embedded into either the building facade or the rooftop itself. So a covered awning, even if it's retractable, would count toward the covered structures. Things that wouldn't count toward covered structures would be things that are removable. So umbrellas and shade sails, things like that, that can be taken down in a storm event. But if it is a fixed structure with a overhead railing and guides or anything like that, that would count toward covered structures.
No major comments, just want to say that those review is in line with the architecture that they're trying to create in the downtown, then that I think they are well merited amendments that will make the downtown look much better. The utilization of the rooftop, maximize that space will be, it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the changes make sense. Some of them are overdue, it sounds like, and staff is in agreement. So I don't have any specific questions or issues. They seem all pretty straightforward. So.
Okay, thank you for all those. Yeah, I think I support it. I think it makes sense. I guess I just have a question on why it's only 35%. If the main issue from the city is aesthetics from the public realm looking up, I understand the 30%. That's understandable. We don't want it everywhere. But if we're trending towards an urban lifestyle where occupants of the buildings utilize that rooftop, or there's other functions up there, keeping people off the road, having lunch in a nice space, I don't know why it's only 35%. If you're having an option to change the code to encourage use, I would think that you'd want more. Can you address that issue, Chris?
So I'll reference this image here as really what we're trying to, I guess, avoid is really another level. If we allow even more covered structures, essentially what the rooftop becomes is another functional level, an extra height. So we wanted to minimize that perception, that scaling, and that massing of the structures, and we thought that a ratio of 1/3 of the rooftop of that space that's visible was the most appropriate. So we wanted to keep it around that 1/3 of a rooftop facade or elevation. That's where that 30%, 35% really came from. So yeah, it was just really to minimize the impact of having a full additional story. We do recognize that rooftops are large amenities now. People are locating their pools and open spaces and things like that up there. So it really is becoming more of a functional space. It's not just mechanical equipment and HVACs and things like that. but this kept that ratio to a level that we felt was appropriate without impacting the height of the structure too much.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess if the need in the future comes, and we can have another meeting and adjust accordingly and keep the feedback going, so.
Sorry, may I just follow up, quick clarification, but it does count toward FAR now though, right? So if it's counting toward FAR, but it's not counting toward this another story? No, so.
Right, so with covered structures, I don't have the slide here, but we do allow vertical height encroachments above the district maximum. So if a structure is built to 100 feet, covered structures, I believe, have a 12 or 20 foot height encroachment. So again, these structures are above and beyond the maximum height
Okay.
allowed
Okay, so
already,
it's
but
already
it's
above.
now
Okay.
counting, or we're making it clear that these
Okay, so it's
structures,
already
if
above.
enclosed, will count toward your FAR
Okay.
as well.
I just had one additional comment. So in full candor, our request was actually greater than 35% for the exact same reasons that you just laid out. I greatly respect Claudia and Chris, and so I was comfortable proceeding with the 35%. But I did want to point out, I felt remiss not to point out the fact that, yes, we had actually asked for it to be, I think originally 40%, I believe, just based on what we thought was a reasonable ratio on the rooftop. So I leave that really to the discretion of the board and obviously to planning staff. But I respect them so much, I didn't feel the need to make a strong point about it. But when you brought it up, how could I not? Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
And I will just add one other thing. Again, with these rooftop spaces, oftentimes because they are private open space, we do include vegetation and other forms of shading overhead cover as well. So if you are doing a rooftop garden, you do need space to provide the tree coverage and the canopies as well. So we didn't want to conflict with already a rooftop garden space that might have a 30% requirement on tree canopy and then additional 30% on covered structures. And now you're really covering up a large percentage of your rooftop. And again, the perception from the street or neighboring properties, that might start looking like another story, so.
Got it. Well, I think, again, if the problem of, I wouldn't call it a problem, but if there's so many people utilizing their rooftops and having a great time and enjoying the sunshine and landscaping, that's a great problem to have, and we can always have another meeting and crank it up to 40 or 45 if everything works. So not to complicate it too much, but I think everyone's in support, and I'd like to see if I can hear a motion.
Just a quick comment, this picture that you just passed by. This picture is excellent, it's very illustrative, and then also the previous one, the picture of the parking, the mezzanine parking, and this picture is very, very visually helpful, and I don't think I saw it in the packet that sent to us prior to meeting, so I greatly appreciate, everything that would be presented at the meeting would be, sent to the packet, because that really helped us visually.
Yeah, I'll certainly make a note to add more of these graphic representations within our staff reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And then I think if you pull up that slide with the suggested motion, somebody can make
I make a motion for approval. I move the Downtown Action Committee recommend approval for code revision case number 23-04 as listed in the staff report dated October 11, 2023. The motion is based upon a determination that the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and staff report, constitute a preponderance of competent substantial evidence. The committee hereby makes findings of fact that the proposed code amendments satisfy all the criteria and amendment standards found in the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations, Article 2, Section 94-32.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Case passes unanimously. Congratulations. All right, moving on. Next on the agenda is new cases. DAC case number 23-01. A request by Polly Doherty of Paradello Burgess Design Studio on behalf of 213 Rosemary Avenue Owner LLC for the DAC approval of 2 variance requests pursuant to Section 94-54D to facilitate the renovation of 2 existing historic structures into a restaurant. The project consists of approximately 6,774 square feet. The 2 variance requests are as follows. A variance request from Section 94-109, Table 4-7 regarding the maximum 20% of overhead cover, and a variance request from Section 94-109, Table 4-7 regarding the minimum 20% of vegetated area. The subject property, consisting of approximately 0.3 acres, is generally located at 213 South Rosemary Avenue within Commission District Number 3, Commissioner Christy Fox. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Polly Daughtry with Paradello Burgess Design Studio, and we're excited to share the Hibiscus House project, which we think will be unique within the growing landscape of the downtown. This area is now Zone Quadruple Business District 8, which is meant to be a connection and an active urban environment between the square and Clematis. With this zoning, greater density is encouraged, so up to 8 stories. Since so many of these historic structures have been relocated or torn down, we feel this is an exciting opportunity to recognize these historic structures with an active use that really benefits the community. So these residences were previously a bed and breakfast, and we're proposing renovations to the existing buildings, a small addition to the rear of the north building, and a new outdoor bar and trellis. The intent is that it's a restaurant. The north house was known as the Van Valkenburg House. It was built in 1918. It is one of the last examples of a craftsman bungalow with Victorian detailing. It has a multi-plane gabled roof, dormers, and wide overhanging eaves. Detailing includes Victorian scroll sawn woodwork, carved wood brackets, and a finial on the northwest corner. Both of these buildings were moved here in 1996 from the Hibiscus Street. This south building was known as the Wax House and was built in 1917, and it's an example of a frame vernacular. So we have committed to more than the typical renovation. So the existing roof is to be replaced with asphalt shingle or metal shingle. The images here are of the north building. Both of the buildings are to be lowered to reduce the amount of ramping on the site, and then the awning and deck that's shown in these images will be removed. We are proposing a 281 square foot addition where it's highlighted in red, and the north wall of that, what you see there, is going to be retained. We're going to take off the roof, we're going to add additional walls and expand the kitchen area. Since this is an adaptive reuse project where we're converting it to a restaurant, and since the live loads are increasing, we're reinforcing the floor trusses, we're reinforcing the wall assemblies and the roof assembly. So there's a lot of reinforcement going on just because of that additional occupancy. For accessibility, we're adding a lot of site ramping, we're adding 3 lifts on site, and we're adding accessible restrooms. So these images are of the south building. We're removing all non-historic decks and replacing the decks at the covered porches to match. So the north building on the right has a highlighted region that shows that addition. It shows a terrace area, and then on the south building on the left, you can see that the porch area has been expanded. This highlights the outdoor bar with trellis. It's a new construction. It's 301 square foot enclosed, 562 square foot of covered porch, and an outdoor bar, and 1,243 square foot trellis. So we're requesting a variance regarding the overhead cover within an interior courtyard. So the courtyard's been determined based on these existing structures and the new bar area. It's the area that's shown in yellow and orange. So we do meet the interior courtyard requirements. It's required to be 25% of the site. We are at 26% in this proposed plan, which is 3,456 square feet. However, we're requesting relief from the overhead cover, which is to be a maximum of 20%. Our design shows overhead cover at 36%, which is 1,239 square feet. The building and lot configuration is existing and was that way prior to the owners purchasing the property, so it's been that way for over 30 years. The intent of the design is that it's not dense and that it has plenty of outdoor dining. As a result, the outdoor space on site is an accumulative 8,343 square feet, which is 62% of the site is outdoor space. So if you count that, the trellis would be only 15% of that whole area. If we were to demo the building and build new, which would be unfortunate in this case, it would be a lot easier to find this courtyard space and the trellis space because we could concentrate it together. But since we're dealing with an existing condition, we're just trying to work with what we have. It is a unique opportunity since we do have this historic vernacular that we're trying to preserve. The attempt with this adaptive reuse project is to utilize it as an outdoor dining experience. The trellis will help us maintain a portion of that for use during inclement weather. And we feel that the trellis, including the height and the design, fits and provides an architectural synergy between the existing buildings. It will also provide an acceptable level of amenity for residents and visitors. We're also requesting a variance to reduce the minimum vegetation within the interior courtyard from 20% to 13%, or 450 square feet. So our justification here is similar. We're dealing with existing conditions with these historic structures. Overall, the design includes 14% vegetation throughout the entire site, or 1,851 square feet. So I'm going to kind of flip through the elevations. We have gone in front of the historic board. We were approved for this design. We're here trying to make this variance work, make the courtyard area work. So the north building, this is the elevation along Rosemary. We are lowering the building 1.5 feet. We're adding a lift to the right, and then we are modifying windows and doors. Or not on this one, we're not modifying. This is the north elevation of the north building. The areas that are shown in orange throughout all of these elevations are windows that we're adding shadow boxes. The ones shown in yellow are windows being removed or doors, and areas in green are modified windows. This is the west elevation of the north building. So that area highlighted is where we're adding the addition. This is the south elevation of the north building. So again, some modifications to windows, and then we're taking off that awning and the deck. This is the south building. So again, modifications to the windows. South building along Avernia. Again, more modifications to the windows. This is the north elevation. Again, more modifications, windows and doors. And then you can see on the west elevation that we are adding some screening for mechanical, which is on that lower roof, and we're adding kitchen equipment on the upper roof. All right, so moving to the outdoor bar and trellis, we are adding accessible restrooms. It's to be finished with painted or stained wood siding. These are elevations of the bar and trellis. So during inclement weather, the louvers will close so we can utilize the space for outdoor dining. All right, we look forward to any questions or comments, and we're excited about the potential of this project as a backdrop to a fantastic location. I am going to hand this over to Gopal, and he's going to talk a little bit about the owner's perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Polly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Gopal Rajagad with the related companies here in West Palm Beach. Polly does such a great job that I don't have a ton to add here. What I will tell you is we acquired this property a couple of years ago. And naturally, with everything we're doing around the square with 360 Rosemary across the street, we figured it would be a strategic acquisition for us to acquire more sites around the mixed-use development that we've been developing for many years now. We started to look at this, and quite frankly, we fell in love with the historic structures. And we thought this is a very special opportunity to create a destination restaurant here. We, in fact, have a great operator in mind that's excited about doing this, that's been very successful in this kind of environment. A historic use with a large outdoor area And what it does is it creates, like I said, a unique destination that I think West Palm Beach needs more of. So we got excited about restoring the homes and creating this exciting restaurant use here, as opposed to thinking about building ultimately another 25-story building here in this location, which we're doing many of around the area. But in the larger context of city building and urban planning, I think it's important to think about special moments in neighborhoods. And this is a really special opportunity because, of course, these buildings are over 100 years old, and this neighborhood was reflective of these buildings once upon a time. We're obviously in a different era here in West Palm Beach, and things are very exciting where they're going, but to have a piece of history here amidst the new history we're creating, we found very exciting. All that being said, the projects we do are not inexpensive, as I'm sure you've seen them, in and around town. And as we were sort of dissecting this and trying to figure out how to make it work, we realized being able to maximize the usable outdoor space in the outdoors was absolutely critical to the business model of this project. I've been living here in West Palm Beach for about 8 years, so I'm smart enough to know, especially in the summer and even around this time of year, it rains quite a bit. And outdoor spaces, as you just heard in the last project, is incredibly valuable. People come to Florida, they want to be outdoors. So we realized that we would not be able to make this project feasible unless we could actually have some retractable covering outdoor space that could be occupiable by customers for the restaurant. So that's the concept. We're very excited about this smaller project in the large scheme of what we're doing. But again, these small projects have a big bang in the larger context of what we're trying to do. And I appreciate everyone's input today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Now we're going to hear from staff.
Again, my name is Claudia Babin, City Urban Designer, and I am bringing you that case number 2301. The applicant did provide you a lot of information, so I'll try to briefly go through some of it. We have two historic structures that the applicant already went through. The location of it is 213 South Rosemary. It's right on the corner on Rosemary Avenue and Evernia Street. I don't know if you remember, the Hotel Evernia is right west on this site. We do have a 25-story multifamily in front of it, and 360 is right on the corner, like the owner mentioned. This is located in the Quadro Business District 8. We have, for this site, a maximum height of 8 stories and a floor area ratio of 175. The applicant also mentioned that this district is the connection between City Place and Clematis Streets are two main retail centers in the city. And also the district has that any proposed development should consist on iconic buildings. The owner actually mentioned this, but also respect the scale of Clematis Street and Rosemary Avenue by stepping down towards those streets. Rosemary Avenue also shall have active use liners to have this activity and pedestrian use because it is one of the most pedestrian streets that we have in the downtown. The project description, as you know, will be converted into a full service restaurant. They have a lot of outdoor seating, a lot of outdoor areas. They have the only additional square footage is, as you can see here, it will be the ones in blue. That's the only thing. It will be less than 1,000 square foot that will be added to it. Everything else is existing. The request, again, these are two variances that I will go over each of them. One of the variances is related to the overhead coverage. There is a 20% maximum. They are providing a 36%, so there is a variance request of 16%, which is an increase from the requirement. We also have a vegetated area requirement of 20% minimum. They are providing a 13% vegetated area, and there's a variance request for 7% decrease. I do want to point out, as the applicant mentioned, that they do meet the requirement of providing the 25% of private open space in the site. Now, the private open space, according to our regulations, can occur anywhere within the building envelope or the rooftops. But again, because we are present with these historic districts, they are not able to provide it on the rooftop or as a terrace, so they can only provide it on the ground floor as an interior courtyard. The applicant also mentioned that the actual outdoor area for the entire site is more than half of the site is outdoors, but they are delineating the interior courtyard this way to actually fit the description of an interior courtyard, which is that it has to be wholly or partially surrounded by walls and buildings. So some of the areas were excluded from this so that we can fit into that definition, which is, again, this is different because of the historic buildings, the layout, the footprints, and what they're preserving. The overhead coverage, the intention of really having this is to provide protection from the weather, which they meet. And like the applicant mentioned, only if we count the entire site, only 50% of it will be covered with the trellis. And we know that the trellis is not solid, so you can also have sunlight coming through. There are vegetarian areas also provided within the interior courtyard, but also outside the interior courtyard, and they are also meeting all the landscape and street trees requirements according to code. Again, the intention of providing this open space, it is fully met. It is a functional space. Will be enjoyed by its occupants, and the overall will provide this activity in this specific and prominent corner in Rosemary Avenue. In terms of the standards, for both of the variance requests needs to meet the standards of section 9432D6, and I have here all the 10 standards that they need to meet. And just to summarize, again, we do have special conditions that exist, and they are not a result of the applicant because, again, of the renovation of the historic structures. The proposed outdoor areas do meet the intent of the open space, and also they meet all other requirements from the district or the downtown regulations. The project is proposing to preserve, protect, and enhance these historic structures, which is significant in the city's historic heritage. And these improvements will also activate this site and these structures, which is located in a very prominent corner in the Rosemary Avenue with active uses such as a restaurant. We recommend approval based on the findings that the petition does meet all 10 variance standards as outlined by Article 2nd, Section 943086 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations. We are actually recommending a condition just to just for the variance number 2, which is that the project should maintain a hedge along the outside of the fence fronting Vernon Street. Again, the intention is to provide as much landscaping as possible. And that's it.
Thank you, Claudia. Okay, I'll turn it over to the board for any comments. Oh, no.
Claudia, the western boundary for this site, that's the new Avernia Hotel reconfiguration. Is that why there's basically a wall that's going to be on their western edge? Is that correct?
Yeah, and they do have, here the applicant also might have a kind of like a trellis type of thing with vegetation on it.
Yeah,
but yes, on the other side will be a wall.
So the reason why I'm raising this is because love the site and super important project. I think Gopal, raised a super important, point on this. These small projects should remain. They're little jewels that, kind of exist in the downtown, and they should be lifted up. And this is an incredible project for, like he said, 25-story towers going around all over the place. Something like this maintained is fantastic. All the vegetation's getting blown out essentially to make this work, but the vision is the right vision, and them re-landscaping the perimeters make more sense to make it more usable for the inside. This is that dichotomy between small sites and adaptive reuse, and we've seen this because we've had the same variances just 2 months ago, the exact same situation where the downtown regulations may not be adequate to handle adaptive reuse for these small little sites. Every time something comes in and they have to provide open space, the requirements are set for a block to block, street to street to street tower, and a large square that goes in the middle of it and some on the roof. But these kinds of things, as we could tell, because these variances keep coming through, have to be analyzed so that we can not have to have them come for variances for this, but it's understood that they're going to find a unique way or a different way to get there. And I think this project does that. It's super important, and I think they've done a wonderful job.
Thank you. Brad?
One quick question on the vegetation on the covered patio area. Is the vegetation there, any of it in ground or all of it above ground pots? I was trying to determine from the picture.
The vegetation? Most of the vegetation that you see here is on the ground. You might see on the renderings some planters on the renderings, but that is not on the site plan.
Right, and more specifically than the site, 'cause I understand there's a hedge, it's gonna be in the ground, but
Yeah.
I'm referring specifically to the patio where if I understood one of the variance requests, it is the interior under the patio trellis area. So only looking at that space, I was curious, is in that space, there gonna be in-ground vegetation or all movable above-ground?
There are in-ground vegetation. Here, this area is actually vegetation that is in-ground. And then here, we also have some other vegetation. I should have brought that too. Apologies for that. Surrounding some of these spaces. We also have a big tree on this side. And we also have a little bit of vegetation here.
But there's nothing under the canopy.
Under the canopy, no.
No. Those would be
Under the
pots.
orange space.
Yeah, I have a follow-up comment also on the question on the vegetation.
Sure.
Could you explain, elaborate more why, like, we need such a big reduction? It's like 1/3 reduction of the vegetation from 20% down to 13. Why, is that, was
So
that necessitated?
the requirement is 20%, and they are providing 13%.
Right, so it's like 1/3 of the requirement. So why do they need to reduce it? So why could it not be met?
As mentioned by Gopal, we're trying to maximize, so we really, like, in a cost analysis, we're trying to have as much dining available. So overall on the site, we've created quite a bit of vegetation. It's just not necessarily in that courtyard area. So overall, there's a good mix of vegetation throughout.
So can we get some, for example, like in Nora, another project, they said it's not reduction, it's just relocation. So let's say, like, if you reduce the vegetation in the courtyard, can you make it up in another area within the project so that we don't lose so much vegetation? So just kind of like not reduction, but relocation. So we still have the same total amount of greens and vegetation.
And we do, if you look at the site, there's vegetation all along this side of the property. There's vegetation all throughout this area, along the front, along the side around here. There's trees, there's a lot of vegetation throughout. So it's, we have an in excess amount of vegetation on the site. As if we would build and maximize the site, we would be required to do that courtyard area. We'd be able to do a certain amount there. But if you look at the overall site, we are over that amount for the courtyard.
Can we quantify that? I mean, I would be very, very comfortable to approve without quantify like the total amount of vegetation in the whole project met, but like just saying it verbally, I think it's not, I'm a bit not comfortable because it's a big reduction.
I think I heard 62% of the site was open space, if I recall correctly. So I think generally it seems like existing conditions have created this ask for the courtyard itself. But if you look at the whole property itself, it seems, if I'm hearing correctly, you're over the standards because of that 62%.
Yeah, so 62% is the open area. It's 14% of the entire site is vegetated. So it's 1,851 square feet. So if we look at it and we look at the courtyard is 3,456, we're looking at, that's about 35% or so is vegetation. So it's technically being relocated, essentially.
And we're assuming that you're not showing pots and planters like you see in the picture there.
No,
So if
we're
you're
not
not counting those.
Correct.
Those
correct.
are additional elements that'll show up. I appreciate Brad's question in terms of how much is potted, how much is there. they have the base for what the area they have, and Potts will fill in the blanks, essentially.
I'm sorry, I forgot to just open the public hearing. I don't think there's anyone here, but just, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak on this? No? Oh, okay. No comment card, you're welcome. Okay, I'll close the public hearing, then we'll continue with comments. Any more comments?
No.
No comments? Michael?
Yeah, no specific questions, but overall, just very excited to see this site get reactivated. I think it's been standing dormant for I don't know how many years now, and also appreciate the historic references to. I guess I never really understood why it was called Hibiscus House, and I didn't know that these two houses were moved from Hibiscus Street. Of course, we have very few of these original structures here in West Palm Beach that remain, so I think that's interesting, and it's just also appreciate, of course, that we're not taking a really beautiful historic site like this and building it out and, reducing the walk from Clematis Street to the square. We're still going to have this low-density project that has, ability to see the sky in a downtown that, of course, we're seeing a lot of height and reduction of the blue sky. So, I mean, overall, I'm very excited to see this move forward and reactivate this site. I think it's going to be a tremendous success in the downtown.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur. Thank you for bringing this project through. I think it's a jewel. I think, as Mr. Chagas said, that's a great description for it. So I think I'd like to hear a motion.
Motion to approve granting a variance. I move that the Downtown Action Committee approve the variance requests included in DAC case number 23-01 as follows. A variance request from section 94-109, table 4-7 regarding the maximum overhead covered area and an increase from the 20% to 36%. 2, a variance request from section 94-109, table 4-7, open space standards regarding the minimum of vegetated area, a reduction from 20% to 13%. Staff recommends the following condition for approval of the variance. Number 2, the project shall maintain a hedge along the outside of the fence fronting Avernia Street. The variance's approval is made conditional upon the restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards listed in the Planning Division staff report dated October 11, 2023, that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning code and consistent with the downtown master plan and the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach. This motion is based upon the testimony presented along with the application submitted, which constitutes competent, substantial evidence that the standards in section 94-38D6 have been met.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, case moves on, passes unanimously. Congratulations. All right, moving on to code revision cases. I guess none under there. E, administrative appeals. Next is unfinished business. Next is new business. Next is other business.
I have a very quick kudos, a quick applause to the videographer and the technical team behind the scene. We don't see them, but they really help us with the meeting and, with the big recent big Hollywood strike. I don't know if it's still going on, but we're seeing a lot of unsung heroes behind the scene that makes things work smoothly. So occasionally when I cannot make the meeting here, I would watch the recording from home, and I'm very impressed with the high level of quality, technical sufficiency that the team works behind the scenes. So just want to shout out, kudos to them. Thank you.
I think that's good to hear, yep. I also wanted to give kudos just in terms of how amazing it is that these projects, especially Nora, has come and working with staff and working with the code and going to permitting, and the only thing was 2 or 3 little teeny tiny things. That is really amazing. That is a great situation.
That's just good planning.
There you go. Agreed. Okay, with that, if there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.